Here's Elon Musk explaining in high detail how Tesla will deliver 20 million cars per year. Take a look.
Oh, how many models? Oh,
vehicle models.
Not that many. Really, 10. I mean, what's happened with conventional cars is people have run out of things to do. So if you run out of things to do, they just end up reshuffling the deck, and you have pretty much the same. I mean, how many variants of car are there on the road? There's like hundreds. But are they good variants? No, mostly not. They're just variants for the sake of variants. But look at how have things converged with the phone? I mean, there used to be hundreds of flip phones. Now what do we have?
We already know what 7 of them are. The Model S, X, the 3, the Y, the Semi, the Cybertruck, and the Tesla Roadster. This is probably going to be a compact, and this looks like a van.
The desire for people to own a Tesla is extremely high. The limiting factor is their ability to pay for a Tesla, not do they want a Tesla. It's easy for people in this room to lose sight of that. If your income is far in excess of what a car costs, then you look at value for money, but you do not consider affordability. But for the vast majority of people, it is affordability driven. This is why we cannot simply double the price of the car. Or you could say and think about things in the limit, where if you had an infinitely desirable car, but it costs $10 million, it wouldn't matter because most people do not have that. So demand is very much a function of affordability, not desire. Very important. One of the things we weren't sure about was the price elasticity of demand for Teslas. So like, as we lower the price, how much does demand increase? And we found that even small changes in the price have a big effect on demand, very big. So that was a good thing to learn.
Meaning, the only thing that Tesla really needs to pay attention to is how can we reduce costs? And this is one of Tesla's top executives explaining how.
Henry Ford first invented this assembly line in 1922. It's been 100 years, and it's really hard to make a change after 100 years. And when you watch it happen, it's actually really silly to a guy like me. You take all these stamp panels, you put them together, then you put them in a framing station, you build a body that looks something like a car, you put the doors on, and then you paint them. Once you get the color, you take the doors off.
That's right. The old way of manufacturing was to put the doors on, take them off, and they are heavy, and then put them back on. Ridiculous.
And then you start putting the interior inside the car. It comes in through the openings that already exist. I wish it went in like this big piece like this, but there's actually people coming in and out of the car. There's awkward movements. Then we lift the car up. We put stuff from underneath it. We put it down. Then we put the seats in the car. And finally, we close it all out with glass, and we bring those doors that went away for a trip, and we put them back in the car. Most of the time, we're doing this with a big, giant car and moving it and doing really nothing to it at all.
What's funny, though, in this kind of whole process is that just recently Toyota just called this an engineering work of art.
True.
The Model Y.
That was humbling, but at Tesla, it's not good enough. If we're going to scale the way we want to do, we have to rethink manufacturing again. As part of the master plan, we have to make another step change in cost. We started this on Model Y when we made these huge gigacastings. And we deleted hundreds of parts. We simplified assembly with the Model Y structural battery, where we decided the floor should be a part of the car. The battery is the floor. We put the seats and the interior on the battery, and we bring it up through a big open hole, and we assemble it. And this allowed us to do things in parallel, fully rethinking the process and reducing the final assembly line by about 10%. And we thought maybe we could do this other places.
Yeah, I mean, in a way, the constraints become part of the solution rather than a problem.
So when you think about what I'm trying to say, I really want to hammer this home. When you have a car that's about 5 meters long, and you have people working around it like we did in Model 3, and we change that to this process where we take different parts of the car, and we can do more at the same time, like we did with the Model Y structural battery pack, What you see here is us doing that on the front part of the vehicle or the rear part of the vehicle. That means we can get more people working on the car, or robots, working on it at the same time. That means we have better operator density, less time doing nothing. I call that space-time efficiency. It has nothing to do with quantum mechanics. We can have that conversation later. But we get 44% more operator density, which means more work, less time walking back to the station, 30% improvement in space-time efficiency. And because we're not building it in and out of the car with those slow movements of those robots I showed you from production hell, when we go to automate it, it's going to be a lot easier. In the end, that will probably look something like this, where we balance parallel and series manufacturing in a way where we only do things that are necessary, with a much shorter final line, blocking a lot less of the entire rest of the factory, so we can optimize material flow using the best practices. And what that means, it's going to look something like this, where we build all the sides of the cars independently, we only paint what we need to, and then we assemble the parts of the car once and only once. We put them where they need to go. The interior is attached from a bottom-up or a top-down strategy, so there's more access for those robots and people. We aren't moving heavy objects around and doing nothing to it, and it means we're doing more work on the car more of the time. And then when we take all of these tested sub-assemblies and we put them together, we finally assemble the car only one time, putting the sides on with all of their parts to a front and rear that was already assembled, carrying the floor in with the seats, and finally boxing it out with the doors one time, just like Cybertruck. So in the end, you get the same car.
This is how Tesla is going to reduce the cost by 50% for their next generation vehicle. And for example, also gigacastings that turned 171 parts into just 1 and 2. This relentless cost cutting is what will get Tesla to 20 million vehicles per year. Toyota, which makes 10 million cars per year roughly, admires Tesla's old vehicle. Toyota does not even have a gigacasting yet. And Tesla has now moved on to the next iteration in manufacturing. By the time Toyota copies what Tesla used to do years ago, Tesla will have moved on and call that way of manufacturing old and outdated.
It leads us to greater than 40% reduction in footprint, which means we can build factories faster, with less capex and more output per unit. Faster, less capex, more output per unit dollar. We'll reduce costs as much as 50%. This is the 2-for-1 concept you hear me and Elon talking about on earnings calls.
Yeah, so I think our track record proves that we can deliver the best cars, and we deliver the best cars in spite of, because of these constraints.
So since we launched it back in 2017, we've continuously improved that powertrain and the factory that builds it. So the drive unit, the engine of the car, is 20% lighter for the same power. We use 25% less heavy rare earths than when we started. And the powertrain factory, which is behind me today, is 75% smaller and 65% cheaper than the one that we originally built. And what I really want to emphasize is that we did all of this without compromise. Our cars are just as powerful, they go just as far, they cost the same or less, and the factories have the same output. So, how did we do that? We did it by designing the entire vehicle and the entire factory together as one company. And this sets Tesla apart. We have small and highly capable teams, and to make a critical decision, we can have the battery cell chemists, the mechanical engineers, the manufacturing engineers, the supply chain team, the automation designers, the software programmers, all in one room, working together in real time. And that allows us to make decisions that are best for the whole car and to make them really fast. And that approach is unlike traditional automotive engineering, which is really fractured. And if you were to go buy like a premium German electric car, the engineers who designed the drive inverter in that car, they did not work for that car company. They worked for a contractor. And at Tesla, we designed the entire car and the factory that builds it.
And now take a look at this one single example that allows Tesla to do a lot more with a lot less.
It used to require 4 microprocessors, which are shown here in the bottom left, We have developed our own custom microprocessor. It's purpose-built for high-power electronics. It's half the cost, and it does, in just one, the job of all of those four.
You can't improve something you don't measure, and we're like ruthless measurers at Tesla. And once you start measuring things that contribute to operational efficiency, you actually have a path to doing something about it.
That is absolutely key to Tesla getting to 20 million yearly deliveries. You just saw how Tesla is now able to do the same with just one processor, whereas before it took 4. You can only do that by measuring everything, by paying attention to the smallest of the smallest details. The gigacasting example is the easiest to understand, but this applies in every single aspect of Tesla's business.
Broadly speaking, the most profound architectural changes will be in future vehicles. Retooling a factory means bringing the factory down for an extended period of time, and that would prefer not to do that, I think.
This means if Tesla produces vehicles and they all sell, Tesla will not redesign existing factories significantly. But if there is indeed a demand problem at current prices, and if Tesla is not able to lower the prices anymore, Tesla will shut down the factory, scrap a lot of the equipment, redesign it, and then launch it again. It's a long process, but if it is necessary, Tesla will absolutely do it. And when the factory is redesigned, the costs will come down. Therefore, the vehicles will be sold for less, which will increase the demand exponentially.
But there are variants in how Model Y is produced. So we've got variants where there's rear casting, where there's a front and rear casting, and we have the structural battery pack. And then there are a number of smaller improvements that occur. But I think for really, really big changes, those would be future vehicles.
As long as Tesla is able to sell every single car at current prices, yes.
We're going to address whatever we think the limiting factor is at any point in time. So we would like to do the least amount possible. So we don't want to get into the mining or refining sector. We will do that if we have to. I do think the focus really should be on refining capacity. We need to make just a very giant amount of anode, cathode, lithium hydroxide, lithium carbonate. It's really the refining capacity that is the biggest choke point. So that's why we're building a lithium refinery in Corpus Christi.
Any hurdle that Tesla will encounter, if it is a limiting factor, Tesla will go into that business, like a lithium refining business, which Elon really did not want to go into and almost swore that we're not going into, and then he changed his mind because it was a huge limiting factor. Tesla had to get into that business.
But to Elon's point, if you make a car desirable and affordable, oftentimes it doesn't necessarily matter what segment it's in because it's one that you want. And we've seen that with Model 3 when a lot of people thought the sedan was not going to be a great hit, but we sell tons of them. So the next generation platform is not one vehicle. It is multiple, and it's on a segment that we will really try and focus on that affordability and desirability point moreover than where we started.
It's an old saying, like, battles are won with tactics, wars are won with logistics. The logistics challenges here are enormous. And when you start being a very significant percentage of an industry, you can't overcapacitize. It's not realistic. And some of these things, like you say, you dual source or triple source, you can do that maybe for small things, but you can't do it for big things because if you're triple sourced, and it's like having a plane with 3 engines, where if any of the 3 engines fails, you crash. It's like, so and you have to either overcapacitize, which drives your CapEx up, and it has idle suppliers somewhere and big warehouses, or you design to some overage that's, reasonable, And then you have expedite costs because inevitably there's something goes wrong somewhere and you've got to fly things around. So it's really just the rate of progress is the rate at which we are able to scale 10,000 logistics problems. The most significant of those is the cell production. And so we actually deliberately try to overdo cell production or cell supply to have that exceed what is needed in vehicles. Because if it goes below what's needed in vehicles, then the factories stall. But then what do you do with all these extra cells? It's like, well, okay, so the much easier thing to scale up and down is Powerwall and Megapack output, stationary storage. So we can then overcapacitize in cells and packs and scale production of stationary storage, which is much easier to scale than vehicle production. So that's strategically, I think, a good thing. Yeah, I mean, the CapEx for Megapack is tiny compared to CapEx for vehicles. Also, Megapack demand is quasi-infinite. It basically, as long as we are competitive with utilities, we can sell as many yeah, quasi-infinite demand for that, really. Or many terawatt hours. And we got a long way to go to get to many terawatt hours per year.
And Elon thinks that the energy storage business is going to be just as big as the electric vehicle business for Tesla, but it is limited by the battery cell supply currently. The Tesla energy business will only get leftovers from the EV business.
And then as this autonomy question is very, very big, because you could potentially have, I don't know, 5 times the utility of the asset that you currently have. So if a passenger car is 10 or 12 hours a week of usage, plus a lot of parking expenses, an autonomous car could be 50 to 60 hours a week or something like that. And you could get rid of a lot of parking expenses. So, you know, if this is true, then as autonomy is effectively turned on for the fleet, it probably will be the biggest asset value increase in history overnight.
And that is one major reason why a huge fund manager, Cathie Wood, thinks that Tesla stock will go up by 7 times from where it is today, all the way to $1,500 per share. 1,000 of that is because of the autonomous solution that she thinks Tesla will develop. She believes that the most important thing for autonomy is to have data. To have the most data is to be destined to be the winner. But then you have to train your neural nets based on all of that data. And that is extremely difficult and very important. Here's Elon Musk speaking about that.
In terms of training, we have one of the biggest neural net training systems in the world, and that we expect to increase that capability by an order of magnitude by the end of this year, and probably another order of magnitude by the end of next year, with some combination of NVIDIA and Dojo. So I'm not sure the scale of that is quite dawned on people. It's enormous.
1 order of magnitude is 10 times. 2 orders of magnitude? That's 100 times in just 2 years. The speed of innovation and improvement is absolutely mind-boggling. It's so difficult to understand. The modern civilization is built on computers. That was brought by the Moore's law, which is the number of transistors doubles once every 2 years. You have a 100x here in 2 years. To say that full self-driving is not going to be solved is absolutely absurd and ridiculous. Here's a 30-minute drive, no interventions, nothing. The car can already do this for 30 minutes. You think it is not going to be able to do it for hours and hours, just like a person is able to do it today? That's absurd. I believe full self-driving will be solved. It's just a matter of when, not will it be solved. And this is the Tesla stock buying opportunity explained by Elon Musk. My name is Matt Posius. Like and subscribe if you haven't yet, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you so much for watching.